Hi there, I'm Lorraine, and yes, I let my sister live in my home rent-free. But instead of gratitude, she laughed behind my back, called me stupid, and then tried to take over everything I built. She changed the locks, trashed my space, and turned my family against me. I tried to forgive. But how do you heal when the betrayal keeps growing? Has anyone ever used your kindness against you? What time are you listening to this? And where are you tuning in from? Drop it in the comments, I'd really love to know. Or tell me, what would you have done in my place? I came home that evening with grocery bags slicing red lines into my fingers. The house was quiet, too quiet, but I chalked it up to exhaustion and muscle memory. I kicked off my shoes, tossed my purse on the kitchen counter, and let the kettle whistle itself into a frenzy while I checked my phone. A new message blinked on my screen. It was from Uncle Daryl. "You need to see this. Sorry." There was a video attached. At first, it was just the usual family gathering footage: paper plates, folding chairs, someone dropping a hot dog. Then the camera turned, zooming in on my backyard. There was Taryn, wine glass tilted, lips stained red, sitting with a few of my cousins. "She's too dumb to ever kick me out," she laughed. "Why pay rent when my sister's an idiot? I mean, come on, free house, free food, and she still thinks I love her for it. Bless her heart." The air inside me dropped. I hit play again, and again. The words didn't lose power. They grew sharper, carving through old memories like knives. I stood still, the mug of tea trembling in my hand until it shattered against the tile. I didn't even flinch. I remembered the night she showed up at my door, mascara streaked, voice trembling. "I just need a little time, Lorraine. Please. You're the only one who's ever had my back." And like a fool, I believed her, gave her the guest room, the closet, a set of keys. She called me her safe place. Turns out I was just her soft target. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a message. It was a ping in the family group chat. Daryl had forwarded the video. Accidentally, he said. It was out there now. "Wait, what is this?" someone asked. A cousin responded with a laughing emoji. Nobody defended me. No one asked how I felt. Just silence, stretching like smoke across the screen. Taryn didn't know yet, but she would. And when she did, it wouldn't be in a shouting match or a slammed door. Number, that would be too easy. Too loud. I washed the tea from the floor, piece by piece, as if cleaning up the wreckage could fix the damage done. The next morning, I greeted her in the kitchen like everything was fine. She didn't even look up from her phone. "Morning," she said, smirking. I smiled back. "Morning." Then I went to my room, shut the door, and opened my laptop. My fingers moved before my heart could object. In the search bar, I typed, "Eviction process in Texas. Steps, timeline, legal notice." She had no idea what was coming. Taryn came home that Friday beaming, her voice pitched just a little too high. "Big news," she announced, tossing her handbag onto the couch. "I got promoted, director of strategy." I looked up from my laptop, heart twitching. "Wow, that's quick." She shrugged like it was inevitable. "What can I say? Some of us have talent." I smiled, tight, forced, but my brain was already racing. 2 months ago, I'd asked her to look over a pitch deck I was preparing for a consultancy project. "Just feedback," I'd said, a second pair of eyes. But now she was using phrases I'd coined, buzzwords I'd labored over. I remembered the bullet point layout, the exact problem-solution framework. I hadn't pitched it. I'd shelved it after Dad's hospital scare. That night, after she went out to celebrate, again, I opened my old files. I found it in a folder marked Archived Drafts, my original presentation, word for word. Then I opened my email. A newsletter from an industry publication was sitting at the top, subject line, "Young Executive Shakes Up Traditional Model." Inside, a blurb praising her groundbreaking pitch at her firm's recent summit. The quote was mine, right down to the metaphor about strategy being scaffolding, not walls. My hands curled into fists on the table. The screen blurred for a second. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at my own work in someone else's spotlight. The next day, I dug deeper. I remembered saving that draft to my old cloud account when my laptop was crashing last year. I logged in, heartbeat pounding. There it was, time-stamped, untouched, until 2 weeks ago. Shared access. Her email was listed. I downloaded everything, draft, metadata, file logs. It was all there, undeniable. The trail she didn't even bother to hide. She hadn't just stolen from me. She'd gambled on my silence. The realization didn't make me feel strong. It made me feel used, like I'd been disposable even in my own home. I stared at the evidence, the weight of it pressing against my chest like something physical. I thought about sending it to HR. I imagined their faces when they saw the proof. But then I pictured the family, Mom shaking her head, murmuring, "Why are you trying to tear your sister down?" Dad saying, "You girls need each other more than ever." And maybe that's why it stung so badly, because I'd been raised to protect her, to believe in her. I opened a new email window, attached the screenshots, wrote out a subject line, then paused. I didn't hit send. Instead, I saved it in my drafts, renamed the file on my desktop, just in case. I leaned back, eyes closed. The house was silent except for the ticking clock and the quiet hum of betrayal still vibrating through the walls. "One more move, Taryn," I whispered. "Just one." The key didn't fit. I stood there on the porch for a moment, jiggling it like it was just jammed, then tried again. Still nothing. Before I could knock, the door swung open. "Oh," Taryn said breezily, barefoot, wineglass in hand. "Yeah, I had the locks changed. The old one was sticking." No apology, no heads up, just a casual shrug like she'd rearranged the spice rack. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. She stepped aside, letting me in like a guest. Inside, everything felt shifted. Literally. The couch had been rotated to face the window. My grandmother's painting was gone from above the fireplace, replaced with a canvas of abstract splashes in gold and crimson. I found the photo of Dad and me at my college graduation shoved inside a drawer in the entryway table. I blinked slowly, registering it all. That night, a group of her friends arrived with clinking bottles and laughter. I wasn't invited. I stayed upstairs, the bass line of some throwback R&B vibrating through the floorboards. The next morning, I found lipstick-stained wine glasses scattered across the counter, and my throw blanket on the patio couch, damp with dew. I started locking my bedroom door at night. It wasn't about fear. It was about space, about sanity. Then, Maria, the housekeeper, pulled me aside one Tuesday morning as she finished folding laundry. "She treats you like a tenant," she whispered, eyes darting toward the kitchen. "This came from the hallway camera. I didn't know where else to bring it." She handed me a small flash drive and quickly left. I opened it that night. The video began with Taryn in my kitchen pouring rosé into mismatched stemware. "She doesn't even realize I'm running this place," she said, smirking. Her friends laughed, one of them calling my home cute but outdated. Taryn waved dismissively. Then came another clip. She tossed a letter, my mail, into the trash without opening it. When someone buzzed at the door asking for me, she lied. "She's out." No clue when she's back. I watched in silence, my hands gripping the arms of my chair. The reality didn't just burn, it hollowed. This wasn't about inconvenience anymore. It was psychological trespassing. Every gesture, every manipulation chipped away at my place in my own home. Taryn wasn't just borrowing space. She was erasing me from it. I didn't storm down the stairs or confront her. That would be too easy for her to twist. I needed something more, measured, unforgiving. Later that week, I watched her from the hallway as she toasted in the kitchen with another glass of wine. "To freedom," she declared, raising her glass, "and rent-free living." The others laughed. I smiled too, just enough to blend in, but behind that smile, something sharp coiled inside me. Not for long. It was my cousin Jasmine who finally said it out loud. Over a rushed phone call, her voice low like we were discussing classified information. "I just thought you should know." Taryn told everyone you kicked her out. I sat in my parked car, the groceries melting in the trunk, my hand gripping the steering wheel so tight it left marks. She kept talking, but I could barely hear over the sound of my pulse pounding in my ears. She told Aunt Marla you changed the locks because she wouldn't clean, that you threatened her in front of your neighbors. I checked the family group chat. My stomach turned. Taryn had sprinkled her lies in slowly, like poison in water. She painted herself as some mistreated sister, a victim of my cruelty. Even worse, they believed her. Our mother had sent a thumbs down emoji under one of Taryn's texts. No defense, just disappointment. Dinner that weekend felt like an ambush. Every side glance at the table felt loaded. No one mentioned it outright, but the chill was unmistakable. I watched Taryn pass the mashed potatoes with a demure smile, as if she hadn't twisted reality into knots. When I tried to clarify, just gently, without confrontation, Mom leaned in and asked, "Lorraine, did you really push her into the streets over something petty?" It hit me harder than I expected. I left before dessert, muttering something about work in the morning. No one stopped me. That night, the phone rang at 2:12 a.m. It was Mom. "Your dad." He collapsed. By the time I reached the hospital, the monitors were already beeping in low, rhythmic warning. His face looked smaller under the fluorescent lights, mouth slightly parted, oxygen tube hissing. Taryn strolled in nearly 3 hours later, holding a smoothie and wearing a fresh blowout. Her voice rose too loud for the room. "Isn't this just awful?" I didn't speak. Mom clutched my hand. "Please," she whispered, eyes glossed over. "Not now. Let things go, Lorraine." Because I was the strong one, the rational one, the one they thought could absorb injustice without reaction. Taryn sat across the room scrolling her phone while nurses adjusted my father's IV. She didn't flinch when the machine beeped, but when a family friend arrived, she wept on cue. They circled her, touched her shoulder, brought her tea. I sat alone on the bench near the window, watching traffic lights blur through the glass, a single truth ringing louder than monitors. No one wanted my side. They just wanted peace. Later that night, in the parking lot, she followed me to my car. "You can't win," she said calmly. "They believe me, not you." I turned slowly, locking eyes with her. Her smirk flickered. "This ends soon." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The storm was already coming. It had been over a year since I last saw Marcus. We ended like adults. No screaming, no door slams, just two people realizing they'd run out of us. And even though time had dulled the ache, his memory still sat in quiet corners of my mind. I never expected to see him again, certainly not leaning on my kitchen counter with a glass of my bourbon, laughing like he belonged there. I walked in, keys still dangling from my hand. Taryn was perched on a bar stool, twirling her hair, eyes locked on him like a predator. Marcus smiled, awkward and unsure. "Hey," he said, "what's going on?" My voice stayed level, but inside everything tilted sideways. "Oh," Taryn chirped, "he came to see me. Old connections, new spark, you know how it goes." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I stood there blinking, watching the shards of my past being stirred like ice in a glass. I left before the silence turned into something louder. That night I texted Marcus. He replied quickly. "I thought you knew. She said you were over it, that you were cool with us talking." I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. I wasn't angry at him, not really. But I could feel the heat building behind my eyes. She knew what he meant to me. She knew. Minutes later, more messages came. Screenshots. "She showed me a journal. I thought it was funny. She said you'd laugh about it too." My mouth went dry. The journal. An old leather-bound one I kept in my closet, filled with raw pages of heartbreak, secrets, fears I never dared say aloud. Taryn had dug through my things. She'd weaponized my words. She said you called me a safe choice. I didn't know that's how you saw me. Marcus's text trailed off, the confusion in his words making my fingers tremble. The humiliation wasn't the worst part. It was the surgical precision of it. Taryn didn't just cross a line. she set it on fire. The next morning, I waited for her to finish her avocado toast before I spoke. You read my journal? Taryn didn't even flinch. I thought it was interesting. Besides, you left it out. You crossed a line. That part of my life wasn't yours to use. She sipped her coffee. All's fair when you make me feel unwelcome. That was it. No apology. No recognition of the invasion. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked to my room, shut the door, and let the silence settle like dust. Then I opened my bottom drawer and pulled out a folder I hadn't touched in years. The edges were frayed, the label faded, but the title was clear. Tenant Options. My hands didn't shake. If she wanted to play dirty, I had no choice but to play by the law. It started with a faint smell of wine, sweet, sharp, and clinging to the air like a memory I didn't invite. I followed it to the living room and stopped cold. A massive burgundy stain bloomed across the middle of my cream carpet. Its edges bled outward like a wound that wouldn't clot. Taryn, I called, already knowing. She strolled in, barefoot and unbothered, a mug of coffee in hand. Oh, that. Someone spilled during game night. Accidents happen. No apology, not even a blink of guilt. Just that same smug calm that had begun infecting every corner of my house. That carpet wasn't just a floor covering. It was the first thing I bought after the divorce. I'd spent hours choosing the right tone, texture, something soft enough to remind me I was still capable of comfort. I placed it with care beneath the couch, the one piece of furniture that didn't carry ghosts. Now, it was ruined. And Taryn didn't care. The deeper insult was in the memory of her teary voice 2 years ago. Lorraine, I just need a few months. I'm drowning. The bankruptcy. Mom doesn't understand. And I, always the fixer, the forgiver, had opened my door and said yes. This was her thank you. I called the carpet company the next day. Maybe it could be cleaned, I thought. Maybe all of this could be salvaged. Actually, ma'am, the receptionist said, a replacement order was already placed under your name. A full install, scheduled for this Friday. I blinked. I didn't authorize that. It was confirmed 2 days ago. I asked for a copy of the invoice. When it arrived, I opened the file with a feeling in my stomach I couldn't name, something between nausea and fury. My name, my address, my card. I hadn't placed that order. I scrolled down. A voice memo was attached to the file. Confirmation for the charge. I hit play. Hi, yes, this is Lorraine. The voice was wrong. Too chipper, too fake. Taryn. She hadn't just stained my carpet. She'd impersonated me, used my identity, my accounts. I sat in silence, listening to her voice as she cheerfully scheduled the install. I just want it done quickly. It's embarrassing, really. The whole place smells like Merlot. The audacity, the theft, the complete erasure of boundaries. That night, I printed the invoice and placed it in the center of the kitchen table. She walked by it twice before acknowledging it. What's this? She said, picking it up like a grocery list. You're no longer a guest, I said, keeping my tone low. You're a liability. Taryn raised an eyebrow, but I didn't wait for a reply. I walked down the hallway, turned the knob to my home office, and locked the door behind me. My fingers didn't hesitate as they unlocked the drawer marked Next Steps. Inside, documents I never thought I'd need. Rental agreements, local tenant law guides, a dusty manila folder with typed headers and printed checklists. I turned on my laptop. The screen glowed back at me. I hovered the cursor over a bold link that read, File Notice of Termination. Click. The notice slid out of my printer like a quiet scream. I read it 3 times, then I signed it, slowly, without trembling, and folded it along the creases I had already imagined 100 times in my head. Every movement was deliberate, mechanical, but beneath the surface my stomach turned in knots. I left it on the kitchen counter right on top of the mail pile Taryn usually ignored. She walked past it twice before noticing. What's this, some bill again? Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the bold words across the top. Eviction notice? She scoffed, tossing it onto a stool like junk mail. You're really doing this? Yes, I said calmly. This isn't a home anymore. What she didn't know What made my pulse steady even as hers spiked was that I'd been planning this for weeks. Quiet meetings with a property attorney, whispered phone calls from my car, a document trail that dated back to the day she moved in. Every unpaid month, every water bill inflated from her hour-long steamy showers, every broken dish, stained cushion, and now, destroyed identity. She hadn't just overstayed her welcome, she'd turned my hospitality into her property. The next morning, I woke to a dripping sound echoing down the hall. I stepped into the guest bathroom and stopped short. Perfume bottles shattered across the tile. Lipstick smeared like blood on the mirror. Water ran from the faucet, pooling at the edge of the sink. Not clumsy, calculated. I cleaned it without a word, but the warning landed. She was unraveling. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. "New roommate?" a neighbor texted, followed by a photo of a man I didn't recognize. Young, tattooed, and hauling boxes through my front door. I opened my Ring app and rewound the footage. He had been in and out all week, carrying duffel bags, electronics, even groceries. I hadn't even noticed. Taryn had moved her boyfriend in, without asking, without mentioning it, right after receiving the eviction notice. When I confronted her that evening, she didn't flinch. "He's family now, too," she said flatly. "No," I replied, "not in my home. You act like this place belongs to you." I didn't even bother responding. That night, I forwarded the footage to my attorney and attached the lease agreement I had prepared. It was retroactive, ironclad, signed with dates, damages, and witness statements from our housekeeper. What had once been a free ride was now a legal case. Taryn caught wind of it through our mother. "You talked to a lawyer?" she shouted in the hallway. "You're making this a legal thing now? You think this won't blow back on you?" I didn't yell. I didn't flinch. I simply said, "You're already trespassing." She stormed out of the house, keys in hand, phone pressed to her ear. But before slamming the door behind her, she turned and snapped, "You think this is over?" I stared at her, voice low and even. Number. It's just beginning. The house was too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. This was the tight, coiled silence before a storm splits the sky. Every step I took echoed with tension. Taryn strutted around like a queen in exile, scoffing at the eviction notice taped to her door. Her arrogance stank up the air, but I stayed calm. My phone buzzed in my hand, the audio files already queued. It was time. I sent out a message to the family. "Let's talk tonight. I want to clear the air." No one refused. Curiosity does that, especially when drama's involved. They arrived just after 6. Mom brought a lemon pie, like this was a Sunday potluck. Dad looked tired but alert. My cousin Jace leaned against the doorway like he expected a show. Taryn was already on the couch, legs crossed, phone in hand. She didn't look up. I didn't speak right away. I walked to the middle of the room, plugged my phone into the Bluetooth speaker, and hit play. The first few seconds were faint. Taryn's voice on a call, laughing. I told Mom she's stressed. She bought it. Honestly, Lorraine's too scared to say anything. I just cry and they all fold. More laughter. Then, why pay rent when I can play victim and live like royalty? A gasp from Mom. Dad's eyes went wide. Jace's jaw clenched. Taryn sprang up. "That's not what it sounds like." I let it play. I make her think she's in charge, but I've got this house wrapped around my finger. I paused the audio. "Is this real?" Dad asked, his voice brittle. I met his eyes. Straight from her phone, I recorded the call she made from the living room. She never knew I was in the kitchen. Taryn's face turned a shade I'd never seen before, panic and fury battling for dominance. It was a joke. I was venting. "People say stupid things when they're angry," Mom whispered. "But you told us she made you homeless." "I was hurting!" Her voice cracked, the tears sudden and precise, crocodile, always on cue. She turned to Mom. "You always said to give people grace. Why don't I get any?" I waited, let her flail, let the silence stretch. Then I pulled out my laptop and turned it to face them. One click opened an email chain, a PDF, and a bank statement. "Here," I said. $25,000. Aunt Carol left it to Taryn 6 months ago. She didn't tell anyone, said she was broke, said she had nowhere else to go. Mom blinked, her mouth parted. "She used it to take a trip to Scottsdale," I added. "I found her travel itinerary in the trash. Didn't even cover her tracks." Taryn's mouth opened, but no words came. "She could have paid rent. She chose not to," I finished. Even Mom's eyes turned hard then. Dad sat back, hands clenched. No one spoke. Taryn looked at each of them like she was seeing strangers. "You're all just gonna believe her?" No one answered. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the kitchen cabinets. The room stayed frozen. Jace exhaled. "Damn." Mom stared at her lap. "I didn't know. I didn't want to know. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. And for the first time in months, I could breathe." The house was silent in a way I hadn't known in years. Not empty, just still. No slammed doors, no blaring Bluetooth speakers, no wineglass giggles echoing down the hallway. Just me, and air I could finally breathe. Taryn was gone. She left behind an unpatched dent in the bedroom door, and a used-up candle burned all the way to waxy glass. As I moved through each room, I didn't just see damage. I saw recovery, my own. I had expected to feel relief, maybe even pride, but what I felt was quieter, weightier, an aching kind of clarity. No more sisterly favors, no more blurred lines. I met with my lawyer one last time, signed the final release. The paper felt thin in my hands, but the weight it carried was generational. A few days later, an email came from Mom. It didn't contain the word sorry exactly, but it danced around it. "I should have asked more questions. I should have trusted your silence wasn't weakness." That was enough, for now. Then a voicemail from Dad, raspy, slow, but firm. "You did right, kid. I'm proud of you for standing tall." I cried when I heard that one. I put up a new listing for the guest room. No ambiguous terms, no room for manipulation. A lease with bullet points and boundaries. This would never happen again. I started painting again, quietly, without reason. Just watercolor paper and the hum of an old podcast in the background. I read books cover to cover without watching the clock. I didn't flinch at footsteps in the hall. I sipped my tea, hot, not reheated 4 times. In therapy, I said, "I don't hate her." The truth shocked even me. My therapist nodded. "That's not the point. Forgiveness isn't about her, it's about you, releasing the weight." She was right. Some nights, I still reached for 2 mugs instead of 1. Some mornings, I found myself about to knock on her door. Then I remembered. It was my office again. I missed what I thought we could have been, but I didn't miss her. A week passed, then another. Taryn's social media went quiet. A cousin mentioned she was crashing somewhere in Austin. I didn't ask who. I didn't care. A voicemail appeared on my phone. Her name, blinking, waiting. I listened once. She sounded small, like a balloon already half deflated before the needle even touched. I deleted it. Peace doesn't chase you. You build it, brick by brick, no matter who walks away. I didn't win. I survived. And in some strange, beautiful way, that felt like more than enough. My home is mine again. Not because I threw someone out, but because, for once, I refused to leave myself behind. Maybe healing doesn't mean forgetting, just learning to live with what we remember. Sometimes family doesn't fall apart in one big explosion. It unravels in silence, through tiny betrayals, and the moments we bite our tongues when we should speak. I learned that love without boundaries isn't kindness. It's self-erasure. And letting go doesn't mean giving up on someone. It means choosing peace when the war costs too much of your soul. Maybe you faced something similar. Maybe someone crossed a line you didn't even know you had. What would you have done? I'd love to hear your story. Drop a 1 in the comments if this touched your heart, or tell me where you're watching from. If you didn't like this video, tell me why and where you tuned in from. Let's talk about it. And if you're someone who values real, raw stories that stir something deep inside, don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might be yours.